Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. This is our weekly Commissioners Finance meeting. Today's date, October 20th, 2021, appointed hour, 1:30 p.m. Having arrived, we'll call the meeting to order, and we do not need to take roll for this meeting. We do, as with all public meetings, provide an opportunity for any public comment or anyone who wishes to address the board of commissioners, other than, of course, our scheduled speakers. So do we have anyone?
No one's online.
And there's no members present in the room. So we will consider item 2 concluded. Move on to item 3. We have minutes in hand of our previous meeting of October 13 this year. We need action on that, please.
I'll move to approve those minutes.
Mr. Chairman, since I was absent from that meeting, I don't think I can sign it.
Oh, it's better if you don't. So technically you can't, but I will offer the second then. So all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Or abstained? I assume so noted. Okay. All right. That brings us to item 4, which is the topics of the day. We're going to start. We have our guest today is Mr. Jesse McCree with South Central PA Works, the South Central Regional Workforce Investment Board. Speak to us about the comprehensive economic development strategy proposal.
It's great. Thank you, Commissioner. Pretty happy to be with it. Thanks for having me here. My name is Jesse McCree, the CEO of South Central PA Works, as Commissioner Eichelberger mentioned. As a workforce development board, the high level of what we do is we connect job seekers with businesses in the region who are looking to develop a skilled workforce pipeline. As a functionary, we have both state and federal resources that we invest in the region. We operate the PA Career Link system. We operate a number of different discretionary grants that sort of invest in, evaluate, and further advance high-impact workforce development programs across the region. We serve Cumberland County and 7 others across the region. And as it comes to workforce development, it is, as you 3 know, one of the key, if not the most critical issue facing so many businesses today. There was a recent Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry survey. I think it was pre-pandemic, so it feels a little dated now. That was the #1 challenge for Pennsylvania businesses is not rising healthcare costs or taxes or even the regulatory environment, but it's really maintaining and developing a skilled workforce. So I give that as a little bit of a background to say, as we serve 8 counties, what I wanted to do in a couple minutes today is provide a little bit of a background on this comprehensive economic development survey, or the CAEDC, as I'll refer to it as. And from our perspective as a workforce board, how I believe it will help regional collaboration, planning, and ultimately implementing really strong programs that will benefit Cumberland County, but as it relates to the whole region, sort of the theory of a rising tide that will lift all ships. So I'll spend a couple minutes here. I also will say this, please, I would like this to be a dialogue as well. Perhaps the CAEDC is something that is very familiar to all 3 of you. If so, I can run through this a little bit more quickly. If not, I can provide a sort of a high-level overview, and I'll start there. First of all, the CAEDC, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy or Survey, is a document, a plan that the federal EDA requires for a number of grants. There are, in fact, the salience of this issue is that some of the Build Back Better funds, which I think are $3 billion with a B, many of those dollars require or highly recommend the CAEDC. As we look at the Good Jobs Challenge, which is the $500 million workforce segment of the Build Back Better, that essentially does require a CAEDC. So at the highest level, this is a EDA required document that will help to facilitate and foster collaboration across a region. This is more than just workforce development, as I alluded to on here. This includes things such as workforce development, education, infrastructure, transportation, public housing, public and affordable housing, and really kind of running the gamut of all of the different elements of potential regional plans. As I noted on here, the CAEDC would be sort of this evidence of formalized regional collaboration. It's required by the EDA for a number of federal dollars. If you wanted to sort of do a little bit of digging, the University Center in Philadelphia has been a great example of a lot of healthy development that's happened directly and indirectly because of the SEDS that was developed there. Pittsburgh also has that designation. It's also a good time to note that South Central Pennsylvania used to have one, but currently we're the only region that does not have an EPA-approved SEDS. So what does that mean? Every other region can get federal dollars from EPA except for ours. And I won't debate at this time the efficacy or the value of EDA dollars. I know people have a wide range of opinions about those, but as federal dollars go, particularly with workforce development, if it was the only reason why we decided that we as a region wanted to put together a comprehensive strategy, workforce development doesn't know county boundaries, right? You have businesses that are recruiting from Cumberland into Dauphin and vice versa. And this region as a whole is really seeing that workforce development is the critical challenge over the next 10 years for continued growth. What a SEDS does not do, it doesn't replace an individual county's ability to apply directly for funds. An example of this would be someone like Lancaster, who has enough of a metro region that they can apply directly to EDA. But it still would not prohibit a county from doing its own planning, its own application for any EDA or other grants outside of a SEDS. It also doesn't require that every county is part of every application, right? So this does not tie the county in for the foreseeable future. For the next 10 years, thou shalt be a joint applicant with Dauphin County or with York County. It simply provides a framework for this collaboration. I'll say this, and I'm not sure if this is politically correct or not, but if we did a SEDS and we did not receive any federal funding, I still think that the value of a regional plan that outlines what do we want, where are we going, and how do we get there would have a lot of value independent of any federal dollars. So what are the sort of the nuts and bolts of this? So there's already a lot of collaboration that's happening across the region through the Partners for Regional Economic Performance, or PREP. So that PREP group, of which Jamie has been a great part of, are economic development corporations from across the region that have decided that independent of EDA funding or a SEDS, we're still going to collaborate together across the region. So because of this, this PREP network has essentially over the past 90 days put their hands up and said, we're interested in pursuing a SEDS and we want to put dollars on the table. In order to get to a SEDS, we would need approximately, we'll call it $200,000 to pay for a consultant over the next 18 months to develop this plan, interviews with stakeholders, interviews with commissioners, interviews with workforce boards and economic development directors. We've already raised out of that 200,000 about 130 or 140, both in direct commitments and verbal commitments. So I think we're well on our way. The RFP for the consultant is already out, so we are moving down this road. My overview here of the SEDS is also, I think, indicative of the fact that as a region, we have a lot of growth to do in terms of cross-county collaboration. And I think workforce development is one of the key salient issues. I might be a little bit biased about that, but I think workforce development is one of those threads running through all of county planning across the region that I think is really important. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions about this, but I think it's really exciting. We're well on our way. And again, even if we didn't raise a single dollar from any EDA funds, to have a regional plan would help Cumberland County specifically and South Central Pennsylvania as a whole.
Jesse, could you please remind me of the counties that are involved in this group?
Yes, so there are 8 counties that are involved. It's Perry, Cumberland would be viable. Perry, Cumberland, Dauphin, Lebanon, Adams, Franklin, York, and Lancaster.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Lancaster is not a part of our workforce development board region. There's a separate workforce board that represents Lancaster, but I work really closely with that board. And so many of the issues and challenges are very the same. So
Yeah, Jesse, this may sound like an elementary question, but right now, a SEDS does not exist.
That is correct.
Officially. What we're in the process.
Yeah.
And you're here to see if Cumberland might be interested.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, for a a commitment of dollars, and again, to give you a range of where counties have typically landed, it's between that $10,000 and $15,000 range. Some of the smaller counties, we're saying, all right, for a Perry, maybe 7,500 is good. For a Dauphin, maybe closer to that 12 or 15 is appropriate. And with those 9 counties involved, we should be able to reach that 200,000. The Workforce Board is putting in some dollars. I think we're landing at 12 and a half towards this effort. So we've got skin in the game as well with this. Again, that SEDS consultant, it will probably take that group somewhere between 12 and 24 months to go through the whole planning and writing process before it's actually EDA approved. So this is a little bit of a long game. The idea that in 2 years from now we'll have an EDA approved plan, I think is a worthwhile investment.
Many times out and about, different people from a variety of counties say to me, we really need a regional effort. And it makes sense because we do all live here, and the boundary doesn't seem to matter, but we all seem to be very siloed in the way that we do things, and it's not moving us forward. Nor do we seem to really know what we want sometimes. So I like that piece of the plan, figuring out what do we want.
What do we want and how do we get there? One of the things that I talked to our board about, I talked to Commissioner Eichelberger as he sits on our local elected officials board, is it's hard to predict what the workforce is going to look like in 10 years. But if we all had to give our best guesstimate, STEM healthcare, IT, those jobs and the skills are very durable, right? So as a region, how might we invest in those durable skills that will have strong agility and efficacy down the road? I think about it I always bring up with my children, 6, 4, and 2. What skills do I think that they're going to need to compete in the labor market in 10 or 15 years? So there are no perfect answers, but I do think it provides a strong parameter for investment.
Would this plan go beyond workforce development? It's far more comprehensive. I mean, that was my understanding. If it's just about workforce development, then it seems like it's a microcosm of something that we should be doing on a bigger level.
Yeah, well said. It's the elements of the plan include a transportation component. How might the region sort of better collaborate on transportation infrastructure such as broadband? I know that's been a sort of a key issue for counties, particularly rural counties. How might we sort of collaborate together to invest in infrastructure? Affordable housing, that's increasingly becoming something here for Cumberland County because the jobs are here, the businesses want to be here, the workers want to be here, but now where do we put them, right? Where do they live, and are they eating up a huge chunk of their weekly salary because of the mortgage? So it would include those and other components as well. So workforce is one element of it, but we believe it's a strong and important part of it.
So, Jesse, what's the difference when the strategy thinks about this? What does skilled workforce mean?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So for us, skilled workforce would be similar to what I had referenced before about what those durable skills are. So an example would be, and this is, again, this is sometimes difficult to talk about 10 years down the road, but what are the key job openings here in Cumberland County and across the region? If I were to pull some of the labor market data, which we can talk about in a minute, truck driving, registered nurses are 1, 2 in terms of top job openings. So when I think about this down the road, and maybe 5 or 10 years is a little bit too short of a time frame, we are still going to need a lot of truck drivers 10 years from now. We still will. All of the idea that we're going to have autonomous vehicles, I think it's a little bit overblown. But when I look at the long-term skill set, truck driving becomes very narrow, right? So you train someone to be a truck driver to get their CDL. That is a good job now, probably will be a good job for the next 5 years. But when I look at registered nursing, there is a whole career pathway that allows for a lot of growth up and laterally in terms of a career pathway. So when I think about a skilled workforce, I think about an ecosystem for a region that has skilled workforce that is agile, right? So as the labor market changes, that individual can compete. So if you have really good IT skills and you're learning JavaScript one day and then JavaScript goes out of fashion next year, you probably have the skill set to be able to pivot really quickly. So when I think about a skilled workforce, I'm thinking about these durable skills in growth industries and sectors that we think 10 years from now it's the strong investments that we can make.
This is what I like about what I'm reading here. Is that SEEDS does not replace each county's ability to apply directly for fundraising. And that we're not required to be part of every project.
Correct.
So to me, it's like we're adding something more to our existing.
Yeah.
Is that a correct
That is.
assumption?
It is, and I think it's also because the SEDS is not, it's not a silver bullet. It's not if you get this and all of a sudden, money is going to start falling from the sky. It is again, it's a little bit of a long-term play. But I think that the strength of a Philly or a Pittsburgh is that there is a well-identified metro region where there's a focused strategy that happens. When you're going into Philly and Pittsburgh, you know what you're going to get in terms of key businesses, key sectors, growth occupations, et cetera. South Central PA is bigger, broader, and it has both a mix of rural, suburban, and urban. So we're lacking a little bit of this coalescing around what is it? Is this just flyover country? Not at all. But without a plan, I think we miss some opportunities to sort of identify Cumberland County, one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing county, right? Businesses want to be here. I think this is a step towards, it's a tool in our tool belt for stronger regional collaboration.
Yes, a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
And I'm enthusiastic about this concept. I think I came through loud and clear at our meeting. But at the same time, we're paid to be a little skeptical here.
Absolutely.
So a couple of questions I want to ask. Now, these all go to the feasibility of it. It's easy for politicians to be cheerleaders and rah, we need a regional plan. But we have to ask how it's going to roll out and how it's going to be accounted for. And, what kinds of results, because as you mentioned, there are a variety of different counties and the interests are quite varied. And this region does not have a very good record in terms of reconciling those things in the past. We just had the meeting for the Greater Harrisburg Association of Realtors recently, and it was interesting. We heard from the commissioners of Dauphin, our side, as well as then Perry County. And Perry County, where those new commissioners were very candid, saying our needs are completely different than what we've just heard from the other two. And their comments were something of an indictment of the fact that the little guys kind of get washed out of the system when you have a regional entity. Even some of the bigger guys, that's been the history here too. So, we need to ask those questions. I think Vince hit on something that is key to this, which is we are not subsuming our interests into a large organization that's going to make decisions for us. This is an and, not an or. But I do want to ask this. So we had, for instance, about 20 years ago, there was a concerted effort to have a regional program that just focused on marketing, which in all honesty should be the easiest thing for us to get together on. And it was a brand that was established after 18 months of focus groups and such, the Smart Market. And I don't know if you were here to remember any of this. Or
was pretty much time, I think.
Yeah. So, and that fell apart, frankly, because the biggest county involved said, we don't want to participate. So they took a walk and it fell apart. And when we formed CAEDC, we tried to reignite that, a little bit of success, but not enough horsepower to make that happen. Then about 12 years ago, 10 or 12 years ago, the Commonwealth came forward with this idea of creating regional action plans. And they had 4 or 5 agencies that essentially set up uniform standards regarding state grant funding. And they had what essentially amounted to a single application program, a single door entry into which any counties participating in a regional action plan, and these supposedly were all over the Commonwealth, then would have ease of access to consideration for those existing state grant programs. And we went through, under the auspices of our regional county commissioners caucus, we worked with all the commissioners over the course of, I think, about 14 months and developed a regional action plan. Spent a lot of effort on that. So, and came up with some pretty good things. It was not an easy thing to get agreement on what the priorities should be. But, and even then, workforce development was cited as a key one. Lo and behold, the state essentially abolished, because they had gone, that was at the time of economic stress, and they had eliminated a lot of their grant programs. So it was an extraordinary set of circumstances, but it's also not extraordinary for the state to change priorities, particularly with change in administration. So I guess my question to you is this predominantly state money, and are we subject to the same type of vulnerability in participating in this, or are there any particular safeguards? Because this is an elongated process to get us to, and a lot can change at that time.
It is. So I think, and the background is not only helpful, but also anecdotally, I think we all know that with the best intentions, collaboration sometimes is easier said than done. And when you actually get into a room and say, so what are we doing? How are we going to get there? Sometimes there's different perspectives on that. So a couple positives of this, from my opinion. A lot of these dollars, it really is going to be federal designations, right? So from EDA, from the feds, this has been around for a long time. And I can't tell you exactly how long it's been, but the SEDS has been an established program from the feds for a long time. Certainly not like it's, it couldn't be subject to change across administration, but it's a little bit less subject to the state.
It has some history.
Exactly. So the federal component of it is one element of it. I think that no matter how the feds would fund regions, my guess is that they're going to need some sort of something to say this is a region. Why are we calling this a region? So I think I would probably put a lot of confidence that there would be efficacy long term with the SEDS. I also think too, and I didn't really I kind of alluded to it with this idea that if we didn't even get $1 from the feds, it would still be worthwhile. And I think some of it is that it still would be a good practice for us to get in the room and work through this stuff, right? So then the feds say, well, we're not doing a SEDS anymore, we're doing this thing. We already have a document, we already have a framework and a playbook about how we work together. So I think there's some of that. With regards to the question of how decisions get made, it's a really good one, and I'll be candid that we don't have, as we're just starting this process, we don't have a good answer. But I'll toss out an idea. Similar with the sort of the House and the Senate, with the bicameral sort of setup that we have in DC. Our organization, interestingly enough, has a board, the local elected officials, that has one county representative from each of the 8 counties that we serve. So what would be really kind of interesting is, in a similar way with the Senate, where Wyoming gets the same number of senators as California, is that could be an interesting place where the commissioners from all across the region each get a vote to say, is this where we want to go, right? So a Dauphin and a Perry have sort of the same sort of play, right? Now we can expand that out. Obviously, we want to include Lancaster in there since they're supporting this as well. But I think that might be an interesting thing to start, which is as the commissioners go, and as commissioners have been funding this, do they get a say in this, and how many, sort of the big players and the small players having the equal say? Beyond that idea, we do need to get a sort of a clearinghouse or a committee or some sort of advisory board together to say, who is this consultant that we're going to select? Right now, that's going through the PrEP partners. So those PrEP partners of workforce boards, economic development agencies, Ben Franklin Partners are on there. Sort of that group is the selecting entity of the consultant right now.
That doesn't give me great comfort, quite frankly.
That is something that we can absolutely change if you all are saying this would not be the entity that we'd like to see selected.
We have a long history here of regional participation, and the governance issues have always tripped us up, and are frankly bear a lot of the blame for the failure to get the act together. So that answering those governance questions is going to be key, and not easy either.
So we've got to sharpen our pencils a little bit on this.
So my question is this. So I look at Cumberland County, I've looked at, the past 20 years of Cumberland County, there seems to have been some type of effort to do some level of regionalization that, as Commissioner Eichelberger has said, appears to fail. And so it is my opinion that if you've been involved with this for 20 years, it's probably time to take a step back and we need some freshness. And when I think about the people who should be involved in this, I think, even though county government will fund it and county government should have some, effect on it, should have some ability to determine what's really happening with those dollars. We do not run the businesses in Cumberland County. Okay. I think about Ames True Temper, and when they reach out to me and go, and they do not generally need skilled, they're like, we cannot operate. We cannot operate in Camp Hill. We cannot operate in Carlisle. I hear UPS call me, Jean, where are we getting employees from? And I've put them in contact with our reentry coalition to say, okay, maybe this will work. But when I think about who should be guiding this, it is the people that run businesses, the people that that's what they do and that they're good at. Those are the people that I think of, because I think it's very easy, right, for me to sit here and make a decision that has an effect on the region that I don't run a business.
Yeah.
Right.
So what I'd like to do is, as we are just at the very beginning stages of this, I think I want to take both of those comments, and I think we as a region need to come up with some better ideas around governance. And I'd like to offer that, we need to sort of figure out exactly what that looks like. Because the last thing I want to do is go through this process, select a consultant, and then to your point, we have.
That consultant should never be under a commissioner's thumb. You know what I'm saying? Like, that consultant is there to expand, not be ground down.
Right. So then how might we allow that consultant to do his or her work and then collectively be able to bring it back to the community for good, healthy feedback?
Right.
And set the parameters early to say, here are the expectations, right? So that a small county or a large county does not have an over or undersized voice in this. These are good points. I think this is why this is, if I'm coming in saying like we've got the perfect panacea, the silver bullet, it's not that, but I do think this is a good step towards regional collaboration. So we'll sharpen our pencils a little bit.
So other than the governance question, and that may be the answer to my question, but why is it we're the only region that doesn't have a sense?
I actually think it's, the 20 years, the 12 years, the 5 years ago.
We've just never gotten our act together.
Yeah, there's some significant, I think, challenges with regional collaboration. I think it has to do with who's making.
That brings me to the next question, which is, you mentioned about the prep partners, and our problem in part is the current prep administrator has been a huge part of that problem. So how, and you also mentioned earlier that workforce development is sort of the kernel at the center, but there's more to this. So I would say, how do you draw boundaries so that authority is established in terms of we own this, you own that, and how do we overcome perhaps the reluctance some of us would have toward putting the people who have created a lot of the problems in charge of finding the new solution?
So this is a big question. I think, so candidly, if there are concerns about the current prep administrator running point on the, sort of the coordination of the partners to select the consultant, right? So it wouldn't be one individual selecting, but rather bringing a meeting together, having the 3 or 4 finalists for the consultant present to the whole prep group, and then sort of the whole group decide. That I view that as a slightly separate question than what you're alluding to, which is sort of larger systemic issues with how prep has been run for a while, and maybe ways to explore sort of improving collaboration or changing the way that looks. I want to be careful here too, because we have 8 counties. We love all of our counties equally. And I think that there's great value in prep in the idea. How we implement it, I'm open to suggestions about how we get there. I actually think the SEDS could be a great way to break to really put prep more on the map, as sort of remove it from like one entity's sort of control and actually broaden those who are involved in it. So
I'd be really interested to see how that develops. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Just I know it could be a real challenge. Now, the other question I have is, when you mentioned about this consultant, what type of consultant are we looking at?
So there are a handful of consultants that have done this kind of work. Most of them are they're economic development consultants, which look at both the region, the location, the workforce, the housing, transportation, the business climate. So an e-consult, a Fourth Economy, these are some bigger players that have actually done SEDS work in Pennsylvania. And so I'm expecting to see some consultants like that sort of weigh in on something like this. And I can send you sort of that short list. Again, no guarantees that they'll apply, but you can sort of check out some of the work that they've done across the Commonwealth and outside of the state.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I think part of the vetting process really should be those organizations that have an accomplished history in dealing with a really disparate region, such as what we're looking at here, so they know how to kind of marry those different interests together without marginalizing small employers.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And those, so what I'll do is I'll put together a short list. I know we've talked about the short list of consultants that we're expecting to see, and I'll send them to you. You can distribute them to the commissioners as needed. But I agree, the selection of who that is needs to be a well-established and seasoned firm to be able to do this, particularly considering the complexities of our region.
There's going to need to be criteria established, and frankly, establishing those criteria and getting agreement on them is going to require that the counties, the group, confront some of those challenges openly that have existed.
I appreciate the candor here because we need to know what these blind spots are before they become larger fatal issues. Exactly, where we can spend a lot of time and resources and not actually get something that will be of value to the region. So if you'd be willing to sort of hear us out on the government side and be a resource, and we can bounce a couple questions off you all too if we have them. I want to be mindful of time. Do we want to chat for a few minutes about some of the wage survey that we have?
To hear that, just to preface that a little bit, we've had some discussion here. I did carry that. I mentioned that issue at our board. We had some lively discussion on it among the other commissioners as well as you. And I'm not trying to put you in the middle of an issue there, but we did have some discussion this board about doing a wage survey. And I brought some of the observations that I heard in that meeting back here. And personally, I remain convinced that it's not the time to do that. But my question for you is in regards to the type of wage-related information that you're familiar with or may have available or have access to that would help a county deal with understanding its wage competitiveness in the midst of a tumultuous marketplace right now.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And let me see if I can provide a little context and maybe we can dive a little bit deeper in here. So number one, we have, I think, a really good set of wage data, really industry, occupation, labor market data as a whole. And if you take nothing else from what I'm about to say extemporaneously off the top of my head is, let me know if you have questions about labor market data, because we have access to that. We can provide county-specific reports. If there's a specific question that says, what are the top jobs in the borough of Carlisle, or what are the top jobs outside of Carlisle across the county? We can slice and dice this even down to the neighborhood data in some cases. So occupations, real-time job postings, growth industries and sectors, knowledge, skills, abilities that are in demand. Let me know. We want to be a resource to the county with that. So in light of that, with wages, we do have a lot of wage data. We, again, can slice and dice that in a lot of different ways. I think it would probably be worthwhile for me to sort of provide maybe not a data dump, maybe something a little bit more polished, but something to you all to say, is this helpful? What further questions do you have? Is this still too generic? Do we want this on a industry or company specific level even? But to your question about the dynamicism in the labor market, for instance, when I look at the whole region, wages went up 9% year over year in this region, which is a staggering number considering it was hovering around that 2, 3, 4, in some cases it tripled in 1 year. Why is that? Because a lot of the lower wage service workers stayed home during the pandemic, and a lot of the higher wage earners were still able to work from home. So you have a removing of sort of the lower segment of the data. And so it's not, average is not actually a good number because you have a very disruptive sort of year in the labor market. Low wage workers went out, high wage earners stayed in. So you're going to see a disproportionate sort of adjustment there. So yeah, if it's a big game of musical chairs, this past year was the whole room just got knocked over, and so everyone's putting their chairs back up and figuring out where they sit in these chairs. And I'm hearing some anecdotally some scary numbers of businesses that say, in order to keep my current workforce, I'm having to pay 30, 40, 50% higher wages. If someone's coming in saying, here are 3 offers at 25% more, how are you going to keep me? So I think we're still probably 12 to 24 months away from this even settling down in anything that we can really evaluate. So out of those two, hopefully that gives you, we've got data. I think it's very disruptive right now. There may be a middle ground where we can provide a lot of the wage data if you have parameters or specific questions, and then see, yeah, this is helpful, but we want to go a little bit deeper. We can certainly help with that.
Just 2 observations on it. I think we're going to be looking at 2 things. We want to fully understand how much disruption is there in a kind of a general sense. Now, when we look to do a wage survey, it's obviously very specific to the types of skills and even job descriptions, if you want to use that term. That's not quite accurate. Between us and whoever our competitors are, other county governments, the Commonwealth, maybe even the federal military installations, school districts, a number of other public employers. So we're going to be looking for very specific information, more than what you would be able to give us. But I think that underlying foundation of stability affects all of those too. So I would find that particularly helpful just to know. The one thing I would point out, you gave the example of the employers who are competing with each other,
yeah.
And that's understandable, regrettable, but understandable. But it's also not entirely the perspective we need, because private employers are much more able to adjust very quickly to the labor market, to the marketplace in general. For an organization like us, if we start changing all of our schedules and such, not only are we going to be contributing heavily to the underlying inflation, wage inflation in the area, but we're also locking in a bunch of costs at a very unsettled time that could haunt us for a very long time and negatively impact all the private employers around us as well. So we have a lot of answers we need. You might be able to help us with a piece of that.
Is there a timeline with when you all would like this? I'm just trying to think of if this is something that.
Where did we leave? I don't exactly remember where we left the decision, but I really think that it's our HR director who would be the best person to let you know what she would need, and if you have that information.
They're working on a contract now.
That's what I thought. Yeah, thanks, Stacy.
Okay.
I think that she would be the best person.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I would be happy to help with any of this, even if it's in a small way. In speaking with the HR director, particularly if we could hone in on sort of public employers and what their wages are, what they're advertising for, what the sort of the market is bearing out. If that's helpful at all, we can do a deep dive in this. So.
Yeah, and I think we absolutely are losing employees to the private sector.
Yeah.
But I think one of the best things is Stacy Snyder is behind you, our Chief Operating Officer, and that would be the person to contact so that everything gets disseminated to the appropriate people. The questions go to the appropriate people.
She's coming here for a meeting after this one.
Oh, great.
So maybe we can do a meet and greet right after this meeting.
That's great. Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
I don't have anything more. That's been a lot of information.
Excellent
Good information.
Thank you for your time.
We lost Al there. Poor Al.
Oh,
All right. Thank you.
thanks so much. Okay, we have, moving on from there, our next presentation is Jamie here, Preliminary Economic Development Corporation. Sent information to us regarding 2021 budget and the budget request for 2022. So Jamie, you're on.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Received some documentation from you
Yes.
last night, was it? This morning?
Okay. First off, I want to send my appreciation to Jesse and all the South Central PA Works staff and everything that they do. I had lunch with Jesse shortly after I started in this position. It was very exciting to have somebody of his vision and collaboration mind to be able to tap into and to bring into our region. He had come out of the New England states, so just to be able to have somebody like Jesse, that resource. And again, we talk about regional collaboration for years and years and years. And at some point, we're going to actually make it work. And certainly, we want to be part of that as well. Before I get into this, and I don't have a whole lot of time, but the prep region, I will concur that there's been a lot of discussion among my peers about the administration of it, and that we need to better understand how to move forward successfully. So I'm willing to participate in those discussions and see where that would go. Again, they have new administration, new leadership over there, so we'll maybe see where it goes as well. But certainly, we're involved and feel there's certainly a better path forward in collaboration and communication. So my perception there. And one quick thing on the SEDS, we had a SEDS, it was done in 2014-15. It expired in 19. So again, technically we do not have one in place. So again, whether that was the lack of administration that wasn't renewed. One of the projects, again, it's more regional impact. One of the projects that was in that set was the IAC site. And how can direct funds, EDA funds, to those types of projects that are regional impact projects. So just want to add those couple of nuggets to that. All right, so the other person I'd like to acknowledge is Al Beanstalk. Al is here. We had a meeting, local defense group meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned I was going to be coming here to ask for funding to support the local defense group. And Al is co-chair of the Cumberland, York area local defense group. So I'll get into to my presentation. You've seen a lot of this information before from the local defense group. Next slide. We are the administrator of the Cumberland area local defense group, which oversees Carlisle Barracks, DLA in Cumberland, and NSA Mechanicsburg. So we have 3 bases, 2 of them which are in Cumberland County, 1 which is in York County. And I'm not going to read all the details, but know that this is also one of our strategic initiatives from CAEDC's strategic plan, is to continue to support our military base and the preservation of the some of the 2021 activities. Again, we are the administrator, so there's costs associated with us administering the programs. We've had some military briefings again with COVID. It's been lighter than normal. We did have a senior military briefing on May the 10th of 2021. We had a building tour, the new education building at Carlisle Barracks War College, participating with folks from the Pennsylvania Military Enhancement Commission. We're continuing to work on a project. Post Road is part of our local defense group. It's collaboration with local municipalities, impacts off base. Post Road is one that the barracks had identified as they would like to see improvements to that post construction of the education building. They are looking at a potential pedestrian access on the east side of the gate, or putting a pedestrian gate in on the east side of the barracks. Of course, Post Road is not in a condition to allow for pedestrians or bicyclists, just in the condition it is. We are, I went to North Middleton Township, got them to concur with North Middleton taking the lead on the project. we are a funding source to be able to support that. We put in a request to PennDOT for PennDOT Connects funds. We anticipate that PennDOT is going to provide a consultant to do some planning, sort of determine what the needs are there, potential roadway width is, pedestrian access, whether it's curb, sidewalk. So we think next week we'll probably get an answer that, we are going to be funded for $50,000. And I'll talk a little bit more about the funding further, but that is one project that we're very much involved with. Mechanicsburg and one of the other impacts to Mr. Beanstalk, Commissioner Beanstalk, is the Hampton Township. We funded a JLUIS joint land use study a few years ago. Actually, before I came on board, was a volunteer with part of that planning process, and then identified some projects that to help, again, the relationship between the basin and the municipalities. Two primary issues there are stormwater and transportation. Hampton is in the process of building a right turn lane on Carlisle Pike onto Sporting Hill Road, and local defense group contributed funds to that project, $50,000. Again, we leverage funds, your dollars that you give to us, leverage the state dollars that we request on an annual basis from the Military Commission. Again, we're having ongoing meetings with NSA, Mechanicsburg, and the JLUIS, and I know we've talked about stormwater and some of the impacts on Trindle Road. There's flooding, and they've talked about trying to deal with some of that flooding on the base. The other thing that's we've been working on for a couple of years now, the 193rd Special Air Wing. We've been trying. They've been, if you look at the Military Commission's report, they're identified as unattached. So their base is not attached to a local defense group. We've been working at trying to bring them into our local defense group. Had a little bit of a political snag several months ago, sort of set those talks back. Then Dauphin County Commissioners wanted to talk to the 193rd before they engaged with us to talk about bringing it on. And the 193rd said, well, we're getting close to year end. We can't talk. We'll wait till after year end. So I understand that they're going to be talking here end of October, early November, between Dauphin County Commissioners and the 193rd about joining our local defense group. Part of that is because I had put a request in the end of last year to Dauphin County and to York County for contributions to the local defense group. We requested $25,000 from each of them. Unfortunately, it was after their budget planning process had been started, so they weren't in a position. I am going back to them to ask for those funds, partly because DLA New Cumberland is in York County, so it'd be nice for them to contribute. Some of the reasoning for the $25,000 is, Cumberland County has two bases in county. I'm thinking $25,000 just to generally represent those two bases, and then 25 from Dauphin County if we can bring the 193rd in, which would give us a total of $100,000 again to be able to leverage funds through the Military Commission. So we are continuing to work on that. That is one of the goals that we're trying to complete this year. Some of the 2022 opportunities, again, Post Road, we're starting the planning process. I think the occupancy for the education building is in 2023. So we're trying to get this project, the Post Road project, moving such that the contractor, when they pull out of the construction of the education building, they're going to have impacts on Post Road that they need to pay for. So we're hoping that either those funds can go towards that, or they can do some of the improvements to prepare for the ultimate condition of what Post Road looks like. So trying to align the planning and design for that time frame. We met with DLA a couple months ago down in New Cumberland. They have some issues with their access to their site. Old Gettysburg Road and old, why they call both of them are old roads, but there's a non-perpendicular intersection as you're trying to access the base, and they have a lot of issues with trying to get out there. So they want to look at realigning that intersection, whether it's roundabout or
Sounds like the perfect thing for York County's contribution to
It is, it is exactly. And I need to reach out to the York County Planning Commission to have that discussion as well, to let them, look at the planning effort, the transportation planning effort. So yes, absolutely. Again, ongoing collaboration through joint events with the bases. If you haven't already, which you should have, our consultant is putting out requests for our leadership reception from the 9th, I believe it is, where we're going to bring all the political leadership and military leadership together in reception. We did that a couple of years ago at the Susquehanna Club. Again, a very nice event. Just so as military leadership changes every 2 to 3 years, it's nice to make those local connections. So getting to the funding on 2022 activities, probably easier to see on the following page, but the Carlisle Barracks, again, the planning and design efforts, which is the post road project, and then planning and design costs, those are coming through the state funding. $58,000 currently available to us through the Pennsylvania Military Commission. And currently no county funding would be going towards that. If you look at the operations and working capital funding, $25,000 from the state, that's where the $50,000 from Cumberland County would go to. And again, if you look, it's primarily on promotion. So one of the things we're going to be doing is continuing to show the value of these bases to Cumberland County, to our residents. It really is about positioning them, if there is another BRAC, positioning them to be able to show the capacity that they have on base, but also the capacity that we have in a community to continue to absorb, if there's missions that can come from other bases, to absorb them into Mechanicsburg or DLA. Again, our geographic location is ideal for distribution, and that's why they are there. And I don't see them going anywhere. We were concerned about Carlisle Barracks, but getting the new $90 million education building, I don't think it's going anywhere either. So we have a total budget of $236,100. That number may be incorrect. If you turn to the next page, that's our total budget, $153,000. 20,000 of that is in kind. We can use our office equipment, our space costs and everything to offset some additional $20,000. That is our current budget. So again, asking for $50,000 to support the local defense group effort. And as I mentioned, I'll be asking York and Dauphin counties for the same $25,000 per base.
Questions? I do have questions. When we started this effort, BRAC was on everybody's lips, and that's a number of years ago. Right now, base closure is not on anybody's horizon in Washington. So I'm still not clear on what you're expecting to spend this money on, or exactly where last year's money went, which I provided a memo to you 5 months ago asking for some details on that. I'm still waiting on a response. But I guess fundamentally, my question is not only what are you going to spend this money on, but is this the best use of limited dollars that we have to pursue economic development priorities in this county?
These funds leverage state dollars that we would not otherwise be able to access to be able to support our military bases. And they provide a significant economic benefit to not only Cumberland County, but also to the region. I don't have the exact numbers of that. But
the board's heard all of that. I guess the question is, is that threat of those bases going away is significantly diminished?
So one of the things
the ground shifts under us, we should presumably shift with it. We're facing a whole host of new economic development challenges, partly as a result of COVID, partly as just the evolution of the marketplace right now, and a number of other issues related to that. So again, my question is this the best use of limited dollars that we can come up with?
Yeah, so you talk about the BRAC, and we've been hearing for several years now, it's not necessarily going to be a bracket, it's going to be death by 1,000 cuts, and a lot of our bases are seeing that impact. We supported, when they came into DLA, they were talking about getting rid of the medical center at DLA, which also supported a lot of our veterans and Carlisle Barracks folks as well. We supported that defense of keeping them here. Fortunately, a decision was made to keep them here. So that's some of what we do as a local defense group. When we're called upon to be able to defend against reduction. If those people had to go out into the community to get health care, that would be additional burden on our healthcare system as well. So again, it's some of the activity that we do in helping to support the bases and the retention.
I guess when I think about this, Jamie, I think that there are plenty of reasons to support our military bases other than like threat of them not being here. I mean, they're good neighbors. They're good for the community. They are good jobs in the area. And when I think about the SED and the regional approach, I think that this could be part of the regional approach. You know, how do we handle the economic development piece of having military bases? I think there's plenty of good reasons to support them.
So I just made me think of another opportunity. And Jesse, it was before my time. There was a military industry partnership that was done. Was that with York County? Was it a regional?
Yeah, it was regional, and it was while it was not funded because we sent it in right before COVID, so it got buried. But the framework is there for an industry partnership for a lot of the military bases around here for the region.
So, and York County does a lot of the manufacturing for military vehicles and other parts and pieces. So again, that could be another opportunity. We would use those funds to be able to help move that forward.
Seeing what the other counties in the region are ponying up for this.
Good. So moving on to workforce development, you heard a lot again from Jesse and the collaboration of our region. Locally, part of our strategic plan, again, workforce was one of the strategic priorities to develop and inspire and attract a talented, adaptive, and diverse workforce. And even more so with COVID, we need to be doing that. We need to be looking at opportunities to engage with our educational system, higher ed, but even more so on training programs to redeploy our workforce. We had a lot of people that are either coming out of the workforce, or looking for higher wages, realizing that the higher wages are available, but some of them need certifications, whether it's nursing or, we have, we're talking about the heavy equipment operator. We talked about truck drivers. Our heavy equipment operator program, when you go through that, you can get a CDL with that. So, and again, that CDL is transferable, not just to heavy equipment, but to truck drivers, long haul truck drivers, whatever that may be. So we are in the process of working on a county workforce development plan. Steve Riccio, who has been helping me with your leadership program, is assisting and pulling that together. We have Laura Potoff and I had met with Jesse to talk again about workforce issues and industry issues and data available and how all of that might come together to inform our plan and what the priorities are. Again, healthcare is number one that we're seeing. Again, the advanced technology. This morning we had a Zoom call with a couple of manufacturers locally, Vitro architectural glass was on, and Turner Hydraulics were on. We talked about their needs in technology and automation. And it's interesting that the HR director for architectural Vitro said that they're actually looking to change their equipment to be more standard. So they don't have to train their people on customized equipment. They can have broader training that we could work with industry partners to do training that is transferable to a lot of different companies throughout the manufacturing industry. So that's some of the programs. Michelle Crowley was on the call. We're going to be talking about how do we work and identify those manufacturers that need support, need training, to work together to put programs that are, again, general in nature to be able to use those skills in other manufacturing businesses. Again, just trying to do as much regional collaboration as we can. The workforce plan also talks about workforce housing. I talked to you about the need for identifying workforce housing in the county. The housing stock is not here. We need to develop additional housing stock to be able to bring them here. In general, the housing stock's not here. We think that Cumberland County is going to be a bedroom community for the metro areas for remote work. We used to be a bedroom community for Harrisburg, but think about people remote working. Maybe they want a better quality of life and want to live in Cumberland County, but they can still work for a company in DC or Baltimore or Philly. One of the things we want to do is to do some marketing on the ED side on job seeker attraction. To be able to promote Cumberland County as a place to live. Again, get some of those skills brought here. IT is a big one. We talked to Jesse. IT touches everything, and if we start talking about automation, we need more computer people. We need more electrical engineers, mechanical engineers. So, want to again continue to use the funds that we get for workforce to be able to do some of that job seeker attraction. Some of the activities that we had done in 2021, again, we just did this comeback Cumberland economy series, talking to some of our most impacted industries, construction. Actually, with Manufacturers Week, we did our beverage manufacturers, did a program with them a couple of weeks ago. And then today we had manufacturing and logistics. Our Workforce Summit was planned for November 3rd. Unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions at Central Penn College, they were asking us to have everybody fill out forms before they came on site. We just felt that was going to be detrimental to attendance, so we're going to look at backing that off. We worked with Dixon College and Hope Station on re-entry program. One of the questions this morning on our Zoom was asking about reentry and trying to get some of those into the truck driver roles. How do we do that? Had recent conversations with a manufacturer that because of their HR rules, they were a new company that came into the area, took over because their HR rules, they did background checks and they laid off 150 people in one day. And one of the gentlemen that spoke today was telling me afterwards that he hired somebody that had a 6-year window of employment, and he asked him, he said, I did some bad things and spent 6 years in jail. He said, but now I want a good job. I have a wife and kids that I want to take care of. And so he gave him a chance, and he said he's been a great employee. So that's some of the things that programs that we've been assisting with, and feel, again, be able to get those people back into the workforce and get them off the streets and out of your jails. Advanced Manufacturing Certificate Program, again, working on getting that in place. I need to follow up on that one. The workforce plan that is in process. And then, again, we're continuing to put things on our website. We are reorganizing our ED website, and Commissioner Eichelberger had sent a tool that we think would be very helpful in business attraction, but I think would also be helpful in workforce. Actually asked Jesse to take a look at that, and combined with some of the workforce data that he has through labor and industry and through another program that they're going to be working with, feel it's a great opportunity. I think what that's going to be like $10,000 a year if we were to go with the premium program. So one of the things I want to take a look at for our 2022 budget. Some of the other things we did in 2021, Prep and Engage, again, we were involved with that. We did business outreach, and when we do the engage calls, we'll go to businesses, find out what their needs are, whether it's workforce or financing, and we connect to industry partners to be able to provide those services. PASHI, Laura was involved with the Southern Region Working Group through PASHI. I am going to be meeting with two individuals from Shippensburg University over the next month, actually one next week and then one in December, to talk about that ongoing opportunity. Again, South Central Workforce Investment Board regional approach, we're continuing to support that. The heavy equipment training for adults and students. We had done the pilot program. That went very well. Felt that there's need for an adult program. So individuals, if they want to retool, get into that program. So HAC is developing that adult program that they can take in adults and students for the heavy equipment operator.
Jamie, is any of that, was it ever done or is it still being done at Cumberland Valley High School?
It was done last, I guess it would have been spring of, I think fall of 19, I think is when that one finished.
Okay.
All right. But then because of COVID, they didn't redo it last year, but they have been working to put together the adult training program through HAC. And again, the logistics pathway programs, working with South Central PA Works, identifying what those career pathways are. Healthcare is certainly one that we're continuing to support. So on to the funding request. Again, we request $50,000. Part of that is to support workforce development manager. As you know, Laura was not only doing workforce, but she was doing finance work. So I would estimate that she was doing probably 30 to 35% of her time was on workforce development. We're in the process of hiring a workforce development manager. We have ads out right now, but I would want that person to be 75 to 80% on workforce development. Basically full-time workforce, working with our educators, working with our businesses to identify those needs and put the programs in place. We are working to deploy the new ED website for employee or job seeker attraction. We want to increase awareness of employment in Cumberland County. Again, we need to market the county as a place to come here to work. We do a great job of marketing tourism and through the county, but we want to do the same thing on the business side. We are continuing on the workforce training facility that is funded by the institutions you see there on the page. I anticipate this is more of a needs assessment, and that ultimately there'd be additional funding needed, and I would hope that we could get it from these individuals or prospective developers to go into the next phase. Also look to implement our workforce plan once that's developed and approved by the board. We will implement the workforce plan. And of course, we're continuing to collaborate with our chambers and our high schools on those programs. Spoke with the superintendent at Big Spring last week, and very receptive to ongoing discussions. I know the gentleman this morning was talking about taking a group of students, actually college students at Shippensburg University, because they have a logistic program down to the Baltimore port for a tour. So those kinds of things we need to get our individuals, students engaged in, so they're understanding what those job opportunities are. And again, South Central PA Works, Jesse's here, continues to define and deploy adult training programs and to retrain and retool those that are unemployed, and targeting them to the needs that we have in the community. That's all I have in workforce. Are there any questions?
I wrote a lot of them. So I guess this is my first one, Jamie. So I've been here almost 2 years, and I hear workforce development. It's a buzzword, right? It's just something that we're going to do. And one of the things that has me confused about the area is, who is the leader in workforce development, right? Like, we don't have one. There's no go-to on workforce development. So you're asking for $50,000, but what is the total workforce development budget?
For CAEDC or
For
for?
CAEDC?
Okay. So we don't have a specific workforce development budget. I mean, we had an employee that did the workforce. So Laura was, I'd say 50,000 was probably the labor and expenses for that position. It was half of that position. We got some funding through the Engage program. So every time we make a call, there's some funding that comes through the Engage program. But we are not we want to be identified as the go-to person for workforce in Cumberland County. Again, there's chambers that are taking the lead on some pieces of it. CareerLink does a lot of the workforce connection between businesses, and we want to be seen as sort of the hub for all things workforce. So if there's a request for workforce needs, they come to us and say, all right, well, here's a partner that we can put you in touch with. If there's a partner that has a program that says, hey, we want help marketing this program, and I just had a conversation with Cheryl Isaacs from HAC last week. We have these programs that we need to reach out to businesses. We need to connect with businesses to be able to put people into those programs. So we want to be that hub of information that goes back and forth to make the connections. We don't do the training. There's a lot of
Oh, no, I
businesses out
understand.
there.
Yes, because every business is doing its own training.
Yeah.
And every business also seems to have its own workforce development plan.
So, well, and I go back to the Vitro thing where
Yeah.
they have to do customized training. Should they be spending all their overhead doing training for their people, or can we put programs together to help, a broad population to be able to get that training, to be able to get a better starting spot at Vitro? So they have the skills to be able to come in and do a job instead of, having to sit in training for 2 to 3 weeks. So
Yeah, so when I hear you say, so you're asking for $50,000, of which it sounds like the majority of that is going to support a workforce development manager. So, Jay, I would like to see the plan. I would like to see a real plan for workforce development. Because just having a workforce development manager, it's great. And I heard you say like 75 to 80% of the time would be spent on workforce. I think 100% of their time should be spent on workforce, particularly on that workforce redeployment, because we have businesses that are sitting here saying we have no employees. We cannot manufacture anything right now. We can't get anything done. Or we have employers that have to bus people in from another state to come here to work, and then they send them home at night. That's not good for Cumberland County. And it's not good for those businesses, but it's really not good for Cumberland County. So I would like to see a plan as to what this person would do. Because I think you need the money for the development manager, and then I think you need the money for a plan. But I don't know how much that is.
So we are putting the plan together, and it's not complete. I was hoping it would be complete at this point, but it's not. As soon as we have it to the point where it's at least even in draft form, we can present it to you. But I don't have the full economic plan or the workforce development plan together.
Well, I would encourage Jamie and that be done quickly, because I am now taking phone calls about, hey, Gene, we don't have any employees. What are we doing about it? Where are we getting them from? Which is, that's very, very disconcerting. And I do think that we've got to get CAEDC to the point where it is the driver of workforce development in the county and is recognized that way. But to do that, we have to have a plan, and then we have to implement it. And it really has to be, I think, pretty ambitious.
And to be honest with you, since I started, I've been pushing to have a plan, and that's why I wanted it in the strategic plan, to be able to drive that, to say, all right, let's put this on paper. Well, we had one from our prior strategic plan, when it was 2015, that identified, again, healthcare, that identified heavy equipment operator, advanced manufacturing. Those skills, they were the largest skills gaps that needed to be addressed. That was, 7 years ago when that plan was put together. So we are updating, expanding the plan to address the current needs. And again, partnerships and where all those resources are.
So, and we can talk about this later, Jamie, but you are in charge. So if you want something, you know, let's go get it done together, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
I think that needs, I want to convey that to you. If you said, I want this, so let's get that done together and have a good plan to get it done.
Yeah, again, just knowing our other partners around the region, and we are well positioned in workforce. We've done a great job in workforce, but to me, it wasn't as organized as I would like it to be, and that's why I wanted the plan to be created. And again, we've met with Jesse and talked about Cumberland County can be that example of developing a strong workforce driver in the county and then being able to replicate that throughout the region. We certainly are committed to doing that.
Well, when do you think the plan will be ready?
I was hoping it'd be ready a couple months ago, but I am taking that on and trying to advance it as quickly as possible. Right now, I can't commit because of the loss of staff. I can't commit to a deadline, but I would hope by the end of the year.
Okay. All right. That's all I have.
I have only comment I have, Mr. Chairman, is that on the agenda here is a note possibly motion to approve the 2022 budget. They asked if we delay that at least short term. No questions.
All right. Jimmy, I just have one question, and I don't know how else to get around this, but I mentioned to your board chair about this. She didn't know you were coming in today. And she said that the finance committee has never seen your budget request for any vetting, which is an error that was made last year as well. So they should not be blindsided. They shouldn't be kept in the dark. So let's learn a lesson from this. We knew this date was coming up. There was time to prepare for this. I know you were out of town several times, but having a chair of the board blindside, it's not a good practice. So, and the finance committee's there for a reason. So that's all I have.
Jimmy, do you need someone to help you?
I have 2 job openings right now that we're trying to get assistance with. Yes.
Okay.
We haven't lost Director of Economic Development and our Director of Workforce Development. There is a gap, and certainly the resources are not there to do everything I need to do. But we are in the process of hiring. We have a strategic workforce consultant that's working with us to be able to identify individuals to be able to support the organization. So.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, those were the 2 topics that we have on the agenda today. That moves us to item 5, which is other business. Do we have any additional items, commissioners or
I have
staff, that need to come up today? We don't have anything. Okay, that being the case, then I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, stand adjourned. Thank you.